Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Today's Thursday, October the 31st. I'm Zach Ewing with Reed Darcey and Scott Rabalais. Got a good show for you today. First, Rab was just telling us how he's having like wardrobe malfunctions. He had a button broken and everything. And at no point you thought to wear a costume today? That didn't cross your mind?
At no point did I think to wear a costume today. No.
I mean, I can't talk. I didn't either. But
no, I didn't want to be the only one on the podcast in costume. I didn't.
What was the idea though?
I didn't have any ideas. But,
that's always my problem. I got the skeleton mask for tonight for trick or treating, but we got lots of people out. We got a Ben Franklin out there. We got a Saints fan with a bag over her head out there. We got some good costumes out in the newsroom, but unfortunately, too boring in here for that. What's not going to be boring is talking about LSU football a little bit, and then a lot of basketball discussion today, guys. And Reed Darcey is our LSU women's basketball beat writer. Rab, obviously, our lead advocate columnist. And actually, in the building today, we do have Flau'jae TJ Brown, who's going to be our men's basketball beat writer. He just hasn't quite started yet, but he's going to replace Sheldon Mickles, and he'll be on podcasts here in the future. So do want to let you know to start that the LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Waste Pro. Tiger fans, if you're planning a tailgate or event, keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. Little bit of football talk before we get going, guys. But first, we owe you a break. Let's take that, and then we'll kind of set up LSU Alabama and give you a couple football updates before we launch into basketball.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Okay, guys, let's do the football segment of the show first, and we'll do some SEC stuff too. LSU Alabama, we're now 9 days away. Obviously, both teams take their traditional off week before this game. It's a different kind of big game, Rab, and we'll obviously talk a lot more about this next week. But in years past, this has been kind of national title contenders, or one team trying to spoil the other one's season. We kind of have like a true, I don't want to call it a play-in game because there's other games to win after this, but it's like an elimination game for the college football playoff.
Yeah, both teams have 2 losses. The loser is going to be knocked out of college football playoff contention, and certainly for either team that wins, and even if they win out, there's no guarantee they're going to make the college football playoff. But that's been the assumption, is we're gonna see it's going to be tested. Does 10-2, and especially if you finish 7-1 in the SEC, as LSU would if they ran the table. Does 10-2 get you in the college football playoff this year? This new expanded 12 team thing. I think both teams need a little help right now. I would say it's not likely that either team makes the playoff. But that having been said, there's 5 weeks left in the regular season. Chaos is sure to ensue, a breakout at some point. And so if LSU or Alabama need some help, they'll probably get it. But they need to help themselves first by winning this game. It's if this was a year ago or 2 years ago, they wouldn't have the same importance because they're kind of playing out the string a little bit. But now with the expanded playoff, with more teams still in contention, it's very important, and it should be add to the atmosphere a great night on Saturday night next week.
Yeah, and Zach, I can't really decide, what would have set up a better Tiger Stadium environment. An LSU win over A&M or an LSU loss to A&M last week. I think either way, the atmosphere against Alabama would have been fantastic either way. So yeah, LSU has to win out if it wants to stay in the college football playoff discussions. I think they can. I think that's certainly possible. But it all starts against Alabama, and that's not going to be an easy game to win. I know people view Alabama differently than they did maybe last year or the year before when they had Nick Saban, but it's still a really talented team, and by the way, they just shut out Missouri. So it's going to be a very difficult game for LSU. I know they're at home, but it's not going to come easy for LSU.
Yeah. If we polled LSU fans writ large, do you think more would be rooting for LSU to make the playoff or more excited about the chance of knocking Alabama out of the playoff?
I think more rooting for the playoff because, in part, and we're sure we'll talk more about this next week, you don't have Nick Saban there anymore. Nick Saban was the scarecrow in the cornfield of LSU football for a decade and a half, and now it's changed a little bit. Yeah, LSU still wants to knock off Alabama. There's still that feeling, and certainly give you a little bit of a feeling. You could say, it's still kind of Nick's program. Obviously a lot of his players, a lot of his system in place. I mean, way of doing things. But it's a little bit the same. But yeah, I think it's more on LSU. And boy, I think this is huge for Brian Kelly too. I mean, I think a lot of people still are trying to make up their minds with how much they have faith in him, how much they like him, and it certainly helped him 2 years ago to beat Alabama. It's kind of a referendum in a way on him, the result of this game.
As much as the college football world has changed in the last 2 or 3 years, I think what doesn't change is LSU's need to beat Alabama, and this game sort of becoming a defining moment for a coach, for a team. I think we look back at LSU coaches and we sort of measure them by whether or not they beat Alabama. That's one of the big indicators of success at LSU. You have to beat Alabama, and if you don't beat Alabama, people are going to view you as a disappointment. And I think if you zoom out on the season, LSU needs to make the playoff. If they don't make the playoff, then the season is probably going to be a big disappointment. So that they have to beat Alabama in order to do that. So that only adds to the stakes, right? If you think, if we didn't have this expanded playoff, LSU's hopes would have already been over, right? The season would have already been sort of settled, and LSU would be fighting to get to a New Year's Six bowl game probably, but they would have been completely out of the national title discussion. So the opportunity here for Brian Kelly is that, hey, you get a chance to beat Alabama for a second time. I'm not sure how many LSU coaches have done that twice in 3 seasons. Rab, you'll have to look that up. I'm sure we can figure that
Nick
out.
Nick Saban used to do it, but Alabama wasn't very good then.
Since then, I'm sure that would be interesting. So, beating Alabama and keeping your playoff hopes alive, obviously it would be huge for Brian Kelly. It would be huge for LSU, and it would probably give him even more favorable rating in the eyes of LSU fans than he already has.
Yeah, big game, and obviously next week's Alabama weekend. We're going to talk a lot about that. Quick injury update, and this is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic. Garrett Dellinger, Brian Kelly said a high ankle sprain for the starting left guard for LSU. So typically high ankle sprains are like 3 to 4 week injuries. I mean, wouldn't expect it to be a season ender, but I don't think Garrett's probably playing against Alabama.
Yeah, it's a concern, a big concern. He went down during the Texas A&M game with that injury, as you said. They're hopeful that he can play at least some against Alabama, but as you said, it can be very difficult. Something he can return from eventually, but you like to have him. So they put in Paul Mbenga. He's a freshman, right?
I believe he's a redshirt freshman.
Redshirt, so but very inexperienced, and that certainly didn't help LSU as they were trying to keep the pass rush off of Nussmeier late in the game, and the pressures turned into interceptions and that sort of thing, and it had to be a little bit of the cause. So that's a big concern for LSU. Yeah, I think as we've said about this offensive line all season, very talented starting five, not a lot of depth, not a lot of proven depth anyway, and this is an example of that, I'm afraid, for LSU.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a good time for the bye week. There's a chance he could come back, but you just think about, especially in
I'm sure there's degrees of high ankle sprains
having to lean on a high ankle sprain seems like it could be an issue for a guy. We don't know how bad it is. We don't know how much it'll recover in the next week, but that is the injury report for this week. Today's show is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Okay, so like I said, next week will be all LSU Alabama. It's Alabama week, but it's also the start of college basketball season. And we start to get into this overlap season. LSU women's basketball opens Monday, Reed, and men's basketball opens Wednesday. So we're going to launch into kind of our season preview here for the LSU men's and women's basketball teams. First, let's take our last break of the show. Promise this is the last one, and after this, it'll be our basketball discussion.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love, gave me love.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider podcast. I actually jumped the gun. We weren't quite ready to turn the table to basketball just yet. We were going to do around the SEC for football in, what is this now, week 10 in college football?
Week 10.
We got like an extra bye week this year.
Yes.
It's kind of a weird schedule. But Around the SEC is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. And as we know in the SEC, it just means more. So even during the bye week, you're watching football. First of all, why the hell is College Game Day in Jacksonville? Why are we doing that?
It's just they've gone to. I'll give them a little slack. They've gone to a lot of interesting places. They just went to Bloomington, Indiana, I believe, for the first time. And
But Ohio State Penn State is this weekend.
but it's on Fox. It's a Fox game.
They went to Oregon, and it was a Fox game.
I don't think they like to do that every time.
Maybe not.
I could be mistaken.
By the way, Florida, Georgia should play on campuses. They shouldn't play.
Well, you saw what they're going to be doing.
That's my
Yes.
opinion.
The Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium, where they play, is under construction the next 2 years, and they're still not going on campus.
In 26, they go into Mercedes-Benz, the Falcons Stadium, and in 27, they go into Tampa to play at the Bucs Stadium at Raymond James. So I know Kirby Smart has been lobbying for a long time to get the game on campus. What do you mean you play on? What's wrong? You don't like the Texas Oklahoma game at the State Fair?
No, I like these games on campuses, man. Like that's just my preference.
See, I miss the Iron Bowl. See, I'm old. This is where this is the generations differing, right? I miss the Iron Bowl being in Birmingham. You know, where there was 50. The field was 50-50.
That one's a little bit different to me because it's so close to both schools. Like Jacksonville's kind of a drive from Athens. I don't know. Like I don't know, and it's so corporate at these NFL stadiums. Like I think I'm with Reed on this one, but anyway. Florida, Georgia, I suppose. I consider Texas A&M, South Carolina a bigger game.
That's the more interesting game.
Considering Georgia is probably taking care of Florida. Let's talk A&M, South Carolina. Can the Aggies kind of, not have a hangover from this big win over LSU? Now they got to go on the road, and as LSU knows, that's a difficult assignment too.
Mike Elko has not said whether or not A&M's going to start Marcel Reed, the quarterback who came in the second half against LSU and really played fantastic. But I think we're all expecting him to get the start. And if he does, it's going to be a pretty big test for him. It's difficult to go on the road in that environment, particularly with South Carolina's defense. It's one of the best defenses in the conference. It's got probably the best pass rush in the country, I would think. So he's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. I think A&M, it's a good enough running team to sort of nullify that pass rush. But again, if he has to drop back to pass at all, it could be trouble just because their edge rushers are so good, right? So we're going to learn a lot about Marcel Reed to see if he's, fully ready to be the starting quarterback of the number one team in the SEC. I think if it's a close game, Texas A&M is going to be, in trouble of picking up that first loss in SEC play.
It's a fascinating game for that reason, and then South Carolina, you could make the argument that they could have 2 more wins. They could have beaten LSU and they could have beaten Alabama.
Yep, and then they're in the playoff.
Yeah, and then there's a whole different conversation for them instead of them trying to play spoiler or kingmaker. But yeah, that's a tough place for A&M to go. And you expanded all this energy to come back against LSU, right? You, in the last quarter and a half, you had to fight from 2 scores down, and there was this big win. And now you're going on the road, and it's going to be a much different atmosphere. Obviously, the crowd behind them and everything, and the yell leaders, and all that. So this is going to be much different for them, and also kind of like I was saying about Ole Miss earlier this year, all the eyes are on them now. No one expected Texas A&M, least of all Texas A&M, to be the last undefeated team in SEC play going into November, and now everybody's watching, and now everybody's wanting to see if you trip up or not, and now you have something to lose. Fascinating matchup. I can't wait to watch it on Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic. Now you're the hunted, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
So can you?
And all season you've been the other,
right?
Now,
can
last
you
week
deal
you were
with
the
that?
other. Yeah.
So yeah, those are the big. It's a little bit of a slow week in the SEC. A lot of bye weeks, but you got
Vandy at Auburn. Auburn is a touchdown favorite. I was telling Zach I haven't placed any sports bets since we were in Las Vegas, but Auburn is a touchdown favorite over Vandy at Auburn. But
and they play tonight on Thursday Night Football. Auburn is the New York Jets of the college football world, where on paper they look okay, and you look at yardage totals and EPA per play and all these analytics, and you say, you know what, they're outplaying that other team, and then they just find a way to screw it up at the end. Yeah. And the Jets have done that every week, and Auburn has done that almost every week. They did win last week, but 7 points seems like a lot, because although I will say I think if Auburn wins the game, it's going to be comfortably, right? If they don't, it's because they mess something up at the end again. It's
so interesting. From LSU fans have a right to be shaking their heads. For the first time in forever, certainly since the early 90s, LSU's not playing Mississippi State and Auburn this year because of the new schedule with Texas and Oklahoma joining the league. And Mississippi State's the worst team in the league, and Auburn is bad, certainly by Auburn standards. And you get Vandy, you think, oh, Vandy's an easy win. It's the best Vandy team they've had since James Franklin was there as the coach. So it's kind of like, man, I'm sure LSU fans are kind of like, what did we do to deserve this? But that's the way it is. But that's a very interesting game. I'm looking forward to that. And oh, by the way, the first college football playoff rankings come out next Tuesday. What is Tuesday night, class?
Election day.
Yes.
Election night.
I know they have a schedule to keep, but it's like, really? You guys, at the CFP, you decided to do this the same night as the presidential election?
The only thing I'll say, as someone who has been fascinated by elections since I was a kid, you don't really start getting a good feel for the election until pretty late in the evening. Like, it's like after 9 o'clock by the time you actually are getting results rolling in that mean something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know people like to watch it from 2 o'clock on, and the polls are closing in Nassau County, New Hampshire, and all this stuff. But it's pretty late, so you may be able to.
And next week is going to be a really busy week for us, especially around here. We got LSU, Alabama. We got the election, and Zach, here's a segue for you. We got the start of basketball season.
That's right. Yep. That's right. So let's get into it. Okay, basketball season. As we mentioned, the LSU Women Open Monday night against UL Monroe.
No, Eastern Kentucky.
The men open up against UL Monroe.
Yeah,
on Wednesday. Yep. So neither one is like a marquee game, but look, it's the season opener. It's our first time to see them in a game that counts. Both teams had exhibitions this week. So let's kind of dig into this. It's two programs on two totally different trajectories here. Maybe not trajectories, but timeline, right? The women, Reed, we'll start with them. They are obviously coming off of an Elite Eight season. The year before that, they won the national championship. And even though Angel Reese is gone, it's life without Angel, but I don't think expectations are lowered a whole lot.
The expectation is the Final Four, and that's going to be the case pretty much every season that Kim Mulkey is the coach at LSU, because that's what she's capable of doing. If you look at her track record throughout her career, she gets teams deep into the NCAA tournament, and she gives them a shot almost every year of making the Final Four. Last year they almost did it. Last year was such an eventful season. It took them a while to really find their groove, to find the right chemistry, to really hit their stride, and they still made it to the Elite Eight They lost to Iowa. That game wasn't very close, but maybe if a couple things break their way, maybe they win that game against Iowa. So the expectation here is about the same. Nothing's changed. The roster has changed a little bit. LSU has 3 players who are really the core of this team: Flau'jae Johnson, Anissa Morrow, and Michaela Williams. That's your core 3. And I think the challenge for LSU in the offseason was finding the right talent in the transfer portal to really augment that nucleus of stars. So LSU really went after guards. They got a lot of different guards who can provide sort of completely, different skill sets that can complement each other. And they also got Samaya Smith back from injury. She looks great. She played really well in the exhibition win last night. And you've also got another transfer big in Jersey Wolfenbarger from Arkansas, and Leo Del Rosario is a sophomore right now. So it's going to be like it is every year. Kim Mulkey's going to have to find the right, balance of minutes and rotations to sort of get the best out of this group. But she has a lot of options here, particularly in her backcourt, and it'll be interesting to see how she sort of divvies up those minutes throughout the non-conference slate, and gets them ready for SEC play.
Go ahead, Reb.
People will focus on the loss of Angel Reese, and let's not forget they lost Haley Van Lith as well. The experiment with her didn't work out quite as everyone hoped. She's transferred to TCU for her 5th season now, but nonetheless, that's a loss. She was certainly an experienced backcourt player, but that core of players is pretty strong. I mean, Morrow is an All-America caliber player. Flau'jae Johnson's an All-America caliber player. Michaela Williams is an All-SEC caliber player at the very least. And I know it's just 2 exhibition games, but Flau'jae Johnson looked tremendous out there. She's just so smooth. She has a lot of confidence in her jump shots. Of course, she gets into the passing lanes, and she's just a stylish player. And she's a lot of fun to watch. And I was giving Reed a little bit of a hard time last night of the game. He votes on the AP poll and the AP All-America team. I said, name me 5 players who are really better than Flau'jae Johnson. And he did, in his opinion, and I respect his opinion, but man, she's really good. And Morrow, now you're gonna have to have someone eat up those rebounds, right?
Yes.
That Angel had.
Yep.
But Anissa Morrow, you had that great stat. You probably should share with people. Anissa Morrow is on pace to wind up as an all-time great in terms of rebounding.
She's on pace to finish her career, assuming her career ends after this season. She'll finish her career with the 3rd most career rebounds in NCAA history, and so that's pretty impressive.
Amazing. Yeah.
Pretty impressive for someone who's not the tallest, who's doesn't really play the center, but she's kind of undersized, kind of a tweener, and she's still, grabbing rebounds at a historically high level. So yeah, she's really impressive. A lot of the rebounding responsibilities will fall on her, but I think replacing Angel is going to have to take a collective effort because she grabs so many rebounds and she was so dominant on the glass. So that means more rebounds for Samaya Smith, more rebounds for Leo Del Rosario and Jersey Wolfenbarger. I think rebounding is super important to Kim Mulkey for a lot of different reasons, and I think she's really going to have to get everyone involved in the rebounding this year because she won't have Angel to rely on.
So 2-part question related to that. One is, do you expect the general style of play to change without that force in the middle that Angel Reese was? And the second part is, what are you looking for early in the season to see if that changes or who steps into what role?
I don't expect it to change. Last year, LSU played offensively. They played really fast. It was according to her hoop stats, which does a good job of keeping a good database of stats. That was the fastest a Kim Mulkey team has played since at least 2009, right, in terms of pace, in terms of possessions per game. They finished in the top 10. No Kim Mulkey coach team that either Baylor or LSU had ever done that before. So I think the reason why they did that is because Flau'jae and Anissa and Michaela are so good in transition. It's really where they're at their best. So everything out of preseason availability that we've had suggests that LSU is going to keep that fast-paced attacking transition offense up. And in the half court, it's probably going to look very similar as it always does. Kim Mulkey's system is very post-oriented. She's very big on entry passes to the post and sort of setting the offense up, through the interior and getting your outside shots after the ball touches the paint first. That's not going to change. I think everything like that is going to be similar. I think if there's one difference, it might be in terms of the point guard play, because Haley Van Lith is no longer there. LSU's going to have a new starting point guard, and the point guard position for Kim Mulkey especially is really valuable. She played that position. She knows what she wants from that position. She has an expectation of that position. She puts a lot of responsibilities on whoever's in that spot. That player really has to initiate the offense, throw entry passes, defend the point of attack on defense, and really keep the offense in a flow and really keep it moving and keep it on the same page. Who is that going to be this year? We're not 100% sure yet. I think it might be Cheyenne Day-Wilson, who we can talk about, the Miami transfer point guard. But that's one thing that I'll be looking forward to answer your question, Zach, throughout the non-conference, to see who exactly that player is and how well does she play in this role that Kim Mulkey has planned for.
Rab, how about you? What are you looking for? I mean, obviously LSU is going to be expected to win a lot of these games against, the blood donor games in November and December. What do you want to see out of them while they're winning 40 and 50-point blowouts?
That chemistry with the new players. I mean, it is a big infusion of new players, and certainly they have more depth. To Reed's point, they might not know who the point guard is going to be for sure going into the season. They for the long haul, they do have a lot of depth of players. Now they got to get players back. Miracle Shepherd didn't play last night. She has a stress reaction, so that she could be out for a couple of weeks. Last year, Poa has not been back. This Kim Mulkey said it was unrelated. She's suing the federal government over trying to get a visa that would allow her to earn NIL money. I'm not trying to oversimplify that, but that could be potentially a landmark thing. I suppose she's from Australia, so foreign nationals don't get to make NIL money. It seems kind of like they should, but anyway, that's a topic for another day.
I think they can, Rab. It's just really difficult for them to. There are a lot of barriers in place.
Yeah. Okay. So it's something that it shouldn't be that difficult for them as long as they pay their income taxes, right? I'm sure that's got to be a big part of it. But they've got depth. They've got more players. Last year they really had 6 players at times they really could count on. Maybe 7 now. But they'll be a fun team to watch. They'll be a team. I think they're ranked 7th in the preseason. I think that's a respect that shows from the pollsters that it's like, hey, they're at least an Elite 8 team once again. I see Charlie Cream, the bracketologist for ESPN, picks them as a 2 seed in a regional, and that's about right. They're really good with a chance to be great once again, and can they get past that step last year that they couldn't get past last year with Iowa and Caitlin Clark and get back to the Final Four? They're not a team you want to show up in your regional, I wouldn't think. That's for sure.
No. Speaking of really good with a chance to be great, making this our star player segment, which is proudly sponsored by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. It's never boring with Kim Mulkey and LSU women's basketball, and their leading player this year is going to be Flau'jae Johnson, who is already a rapper who has a published album out there. She's done shows. I mean, this is not just like a hobby for her. This is like a second profession almost for Flau'jae. And now she steps into the spotlight on the court too, Reed. And I say steps into the spotlight. I mean, she was their leading scorer in 5 of 7 postseason games last year. It's not like
she was their best player.
It's not like she was not in the spotlight, but now with that Angel Reese, it's all Johnson.
Yeah, for sure, and she's really stepped up in these 2 exhibition games. Yes, LSU's played Xavier of New Orleans and LSU Alexandria, but she's been phenomenal, far and away LSU's best player. She's averaging close to 30 points on 68% shooting. She's made 4 of the 8 3-pointers that she's attempted. She's been phenomenal. There hasn't been any rust with her. And to Rab's point, I think she's got a compelling case. If she levels up her game, absolutely got a compelling case to be an All-American by the time the season ends. That's sort of what her ceiling is. That's what, if she stays on this trajectory, that's what she can accomplish, right? And to your point about her music, Zach, I think there's a misconception out there that she does the music as kind of like a side hustle or a hobby as well. That is not how she views it at all. That is not how she wants people to view her at all. She wants people to view her as a person who devotes equal time to her basketball career and equal time to her music career. And she really wants to be equally successful in both areas. It's really kind of an experiment that we throw around the word unique a lot, but I think it's truly unique. Nobody else across the country in college basketball is doing something like this. And what's most impressive is that it's working so far, right?
Yeah.
She is co-SEC preseason player of the year, and in music she's playing shows at the ESPYs, she's playing at the BET Awards.
The NFL came out with their songs of the season, this list of songs before the season, and her song with Lil Wayne was on there.
She has a song with Lil Wayne, and she is a legitimately good performer. I was fortunate enough a few weeks ago to go to Savannah to see her perform, her hometown. And she did a concert in a park, an outdoor concert there with the Savannah Philharmonic Orchestra.
Wow.
And that was really her. It was the first time I'd seen her perform live, and it was just really, really impressive. She played 2 songs, and she rapped the whole way through. She didn't lip sync, Zach Rab. She didn't skip over words to catch her breath. She didn't mumble. She just rapped clearly and confidently and loudly, and she really commanded that stage. And she also sung a little bit. Like, she's not just a rapper. Like, she also has a really good voice as well. So I think just when you think about her and her story, she has an incredible story. She's incredibly talented. She's earned everything that she's gotten through hard work and dedication to what she wants to do. And now is her time, like you mentioned. LSU doesn't have Angel Reese. They don't have sort of the face of the program now. Will it be her to step into the spotlight based on how she played in the tournament last year? It really feels like she's at her best when the lights are their brightest.
And if you can't tell, you should go read Reed's story about Flau'jae Johnson, published on Tuesday, I think.
Yes.
It's worth it. I mean, if you just read the headlines, like the ambitions of Flau'jae Johnson, and it is about her stepping into the spotlight, both on and off the court, and how comfortable she is in that role. So, LSU athletics has had a ton of stars, and still does on campus. She's right up there with any of them, or at least has a chance to be, certainly.
No question. And there's no one been quite like her to try to compartmentalize and be an All-American in basketball, which she certainly has the potential to be, and to be this high-profile musician, singer, is something that we haven't quite seen before. I mean, we kind of, I say, joke about Livy Dunn a lot, the LSU gymnast, but she's out there doing ads and promotional things and putting out videos out there and stuff like that, but not performing, and she's not to the level of a gymnast.
She's also not also the best player on the team, right?
She's not. Haley Bryant is the best gymnast. She's not Haley Bryant, but she's good, and she's a competitor. But something on this level I don't think we've ever seen before. And it's been remarkable, the wattage of star power that LSU has had in recent years. With an Angel Reese, with a Livy Dunn, with 2 Heisman Trophy winners since 2019, and obviously I was at the Olympics this summer. 2 of the biggest stars were Sha'Carri Richardson and Mondo Duplantis.
Paul Skeens.
Paul Skeens shows back up for the football game. He's hanging out in the student section with Livy and watching the Ole Miss game, and I assume they went on the field. I assume they did.
If you didn't, you got run over by somebody else.
That's right. So that part has been remarkable, and she fits right in there, and you can say right now she's the top. She has no comp, and so she's at the top of that list.
Yeah. Okay, so we go from the women who were, as you said, 7th in the AP preseason top 25, and I think picked 3rd in the SEC behind defending national champion South Carolina, and then also Texas, which joins the league. We go from that to the men, and this is a totally different story. And I see you're getting your roster ready over there because you need one. Like, LSU,
it's a little bit like the No Name defense,
and this is not to say that that LSU will definitely be a bad team, but like if you look at their stats from last year, Jalen Cook only played in 13 games. He was the leading scorer. That's a whole other story. Entered the NBA draft and ended up not being drafted. Jordan Wright was the next leading scorer. He's gone. Will Baker was the leading scorer after that. He's gone. They don't have anybody coming back who averaged double figures. They're going to rely on transfers again. They're going to rely. I think probably Reed just. Looking at what they said at SEC Media Days, think they're going to be a good defensive team, but it is not going to be a team where you recognize a lot of these guys running out on the court.
No, it's going to take a while for LSU fans to sort of get accustomed to it. Lots of new transfers. We're expecting them to start 3 or 4 transfers. But if you look at the ways that Matt McMahon tried to improve this team, he really highlighted 2 areas in my eyes. The one was perimeter defense. He wanted to get a backcourt that could defend better than the one that did last year. And I think he wants to shoot more threes. If you look at the exhibition game they played, they look really sharp. First of all, they played really well. They didn't really make too many mistakes. They all looked on the same page. I know it was an exhibition, but they still look good. They also shot 37 threes, Zach, which is something they've done only twice in the previous 2 seasons under Matt McMahon. And so they might want to get up more threes because they have the personnel to do so. Cam Carter, who's a transfer from Kansas State, he can shoot it from out there. Matt McMahon wants him to be a little more efficient on those shots. There's also Jordan Sears, who transferred in from UT Martin. He can shoot, he can score. And then there's DG Bailey, who I believe came in from Richmond. He's also a sort of a good defender, low center of gravity, kind of a steals guy. A guy who can get steals, guy who can space the floor. So it's going to be a combination of shooting in the backcourt with size and athleticism in the front court. There's a lot of really tall, long front court players that can switch out on the perimeter and defend the rim. So I think LSU has the makings of a good team. The challenge will be making it all cohesive, making it all come together with so many new faces. LSU has a pretty difficult non-conference schedule. They don't play any ranked teams, but they do play 4 power conference teams. So LSU will be tested right away, and they'll have a chance to really prove that they can be competitive in the SEC, and that's really the goal. You just want to be competitive, right? You went from 2 wins in conference play in the first year under Matt McMahon to 9 the next year. Can you build on that? Do you take a step back? I think the answer will tell us a lot about the trajectory of this program.
Yeah, losing some of those star players that y'all mentioned is a you could think first thought is a step back, but this is the nature of college basketball now, right? I mean, you build and rebuild year to year, and they brought in a lot of players, a lot of transfers, got a couple of good recruits, and they got to see what they can put it all together. And I think the expectation, and Matt McMahon has not shied away from the expectations that 2 conference wins your first year, just trying to get a team out there on the court after you lost so many players after Will Wade was fired. And then last year, 9 conference wins, make the NIT. It's progress. And now it's try to take that next step. You're in a new 16-team league now. I saw Joe, speaking of bracketology, Joe Lenari's projection had 10 SEC teams out of 16 in the NCAA tournament.
Isn't it crazy, by the way, just not to interrupt you, but imagine going back 10, 12 years and saying SEC men's basketball would be better and deeper than SEC women's basketball. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it might be.
Yeah, no, it is, especially when you think of a Tennessee women's program taking a step back. But it is. They've made a concerted effort to try for schools to spend more resources and bring in more better coaches. And I think Matt McMahon is one of those. I think for a lot of people, the jury's still out on him. They still got a candle in the window for Will Wade. He's not coming back, folks. Let's say that on the podcast. Will Wade is never going to coach at LSU again. Okay, you got to move on and be on board with Matt McMahon or not if you want to, but he's the coach now and a good coach. I think he suffered a little bit by comparison with Kim Mulkey and her program. It's been more of a slow boil with the men. I think it's to what we're talking about. It being more competitive. It was a little easier. Not that it's easy to win at the level the LSU women are winning, but there aren't as many programs in your way. There's a lot more programs in your way in men's basketball in the SEC and around the country, and it's taken a little time. But the expectations are there. They're reasonable. That they try to make it to the NCAA tournament this year. Matt said himself after the exhibition game Tuesday night. He said that's what you come to LSU for. You to make the NCAA tournament and to win some games. LSU traditionally has had a very feast or famine existence in basketball. It's either Final Four and great players like Shaquille O'Neal and Pete Maravich, or last in the SEC. And there's only been one period of time in LSU's history where they were a consistent winner under Dale Brown, made 15 straight postseasons when the postseason fields were smaller with the NCAA and NIT. From 79 to 2003. I'm sorry, 1993. And so can LSU and Matt McMahon get back to that level of consistency? Last year was a start. This year would be another step if they can make it.
Yeah. Men's basketball at LSU, especially in this modern era, kind of takes on such an afterthought. Like they have to break through the consciousness because you're starting the season during football. That's always been the case. But now women's basketball has this high wattage star power. Gymnastics is the defending national champion. And then by the end of the season, you're starting baseball season. Like, unless you're really good, people are not going to pay attention to you. And that's just reality at LSU.
They want to care, though. They want to care about
and we saw that when they won the SEC in 2019 with Will Wade. People did care. They did pack the PMAC,
Yes.
and there was some, the vibes were strong, as the kids say, right?
Yeah.
The kids still say that.
Not really.
You have to ask him.
Not really, Zach. But a good effort though.
My kids are rolling their eyes. But I will say this: LSU men were picked 14th in the SEC, which surprised me.
They're
only ahead of Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. They're behind Missouri, went 0-18 in the SEC play last year. Like, I think they'll finish higher than that. I don't know if they're going to break into that ultra strong top half of the SEC. I don't know if you're going to see better than 9-9. But help is on the way. Okay, they have the number 4 recruiting class in the nation right now, according to 24/7 Sports for 2025. And you can kind of see Matt McMahon. It may take longer than LSU fans wanted to, but he's building this thing.
Look, they had no choice. If I can go back in time a little bit, the whole Will Wade situation, the NCAA had LSU in a bind. It's like, if you don't get rid of Will, and no one's ever verbalized this, but this is my opinion and my feeling from reading the whole situation. If you don't get rid of Will Wade, we're going to charge your football program with all kinds of stuff related to the whole Vidal Alexander incident, and football is going to get hammered. And so they got rid of Will Wade. The NCAA wanted Will Wade gone because the whole wiretap thing and how bad it looked and all this stuff. And they had him on tape saying all these crazy, ridiculous things. So he had to go. That was a body blow to the program. All these players. I mean, Matt, you got to remember, Matt McMahon literally had no players on the roster at one point after he took the job. No players. Everyone wanted to leave, and a couple of players ended up coming back, but no superstar players.
Well, when he was hired, the transfer portal had already been open for a week.
Good point,
right?
Yes.
Because players had already put their name in, right? They'd already schools. I'm sure. It started before the transfer portal officially opened, but schools had already been talking to players. So he started off behind, right? So he had to piece something together with what was left.
So it's taken some time, but LSU fans have no choice but to be patient and say, look, this guy has a good track record. He certainly won at a high level at Murray State with players like John Morant, who of course went on to NBA superstardom, and Scott Woodward has made you like the hires he made in all the other sports. Brian Kelly, pretty much. I think most people would say a shaky nod, yes, but you got to give them some time. And if this is not the year, you have to be patient for the next year. But they're getting there, and I think it's something that is building. It's just maybe not coming as fast as people would like, but I think Matt's a good coach, and I think he's building a good program, and we're going to see the results of that in the relatively near future.
And LSU fans, they've always had to be patient with this, right? When LSU hired Matt McMahon, they gave him a 7-year contract. That wasn't by accident, right? That's a long contract. They gave him a long runway to sort of give him time to build this thing. Matt McMahon considers himself at his core to be a player development coach. It's what he loves to do the most. It's what he's best at in his eyes, and it's what his most notable achievement, I guess, if you want to say, as a head coach so far, is developing John Morant. Right? He found John Morant. He was unknown high school prospect, and by the time John Morant left Murray State, he was a number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft. Right? So that's who he is.
Good line on the resume.
Yeah, that's who he wants to be as a coach, and that takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. You can't just bring in transfers, have them here for 1 or 2 seasons, and then they're gone. You can't develop those guys, but you can develop the guys who come in as freshmen, and you can retain them throughout their whole careers. You can develop them into good players, but that takes time, like you said. And I think the recruiting classes that LSU has built in the last 2 cycles, the success of the Matt McMahon era is going to be dependent on those guys, not the guys who've been on the team the first 2 years of his tenure.
All right, so we have this juxtaposition of a men's program where they're preaching patience and we're preaching patience, and hey, NCAA says for this new era where you can pay players, you got to get rid of the guy who paid players. Like, find that funny. I mean, he broke the rules. Like,
makes a lot of sense when you think about it, Zach. Like this doesn't.
But
really
his timing was bad.
He broke the rules. He knew the rules and broke them. So I'm not trying to say that was, but it's just funny the way it worked out. So you have this men's program that's supposed to be patient. You have a women's program where we expect to win now and win big every single year. And that's their own expectations. That's not even outside expectations. So having said that, for our next segment, I'm going to kind of expectations / predictions / what. Let's kind of keep this to the non-conference, because I think we'll revisit basketball probably around Christmas, New Year's, and talk about the conference season and what these teams look like. Let's keep this to the non-conference. What are your expectations? What are you looking for out of these programs? And this segment is proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. We'll start with the women. Reed, is this they got to sweep the non-con situation? I mean, what games are you circling? What do you expect?
There's not a whole lot of opportunities for LSU to really prove themselves in the non-conference this year. If you think about it, last year, LSU had 3 power conference teams in the non-conference, and 2 of those teams were ranked, Colorado and Virginia Tech. Two really good teams that made runs to the NCAA tournament. Those games were tough. This year, it's a little different. LSU will play, assuming that things break right, they'll play 2 power conference teams, one against Stanford, one against NC State. And NC State is ranked in the top 10 to 12, I believe. That's going to be a tough game. But, Zach, and this has kind of been frustrating for me, that game is going to be the week of Thanksgiving in the Bahamas in what I think is going to be a hotel ballroom. And it's going to be broadcast on something called Flow Hoops, which is a streaming service that doesn't really work very well. So that's going to be LSU's biggest game of the non-conference season, and not too many people are going to watch it. So that's that.
And they have to beat... Is it Washington to
LSU
get to that?
has to beat Washington to get to that point,
yeah.
and NC State has to beat Southern. So it's 3 power conference teams, assuming when they play Washington. Right. So, it's that, and then it's Stanford. Stanford is not what it was last year. The legendary longtime Hall of Fame coach Tara Vanderveer, she's retired now. Stanford had a big exodus of players in the transfer portal, and Cameron Brink is gone. Kiki Uriafen's gone.
My favorite name, by the way.
Yeah, Kiki Uriafen. She's really good. So that game is not what it would have been 2-3 years ago. So it's a relatively light non-conference schedule for LSU. I think they should get through it without too many problems.
At the most, they're going to lose 1 game. The NC State game,
and any more than that means that they're not. I mean, obviously, we're still talking non-conference. SEC is where your bread is buttered, so to speak. But Rab, you're saying that should be the expectation.
Yeah, that should be the expectation. How they win these games is important. I remember watching them come out 2 years ago, the national championship season, and go, they're just pounding people. I mean, and last year was like, yeah, they're winning, but they're kind of grinding out these wins. That's what I'm going to kind of look for. Will this team resemble the 2022-23 team more in the non-conference schedule, or will they resemble more last year's team? And as we said earlier, they have a couple of players they have to try to get back. We honestly don't know what last year Poa's status is.
We don't.
But I think we'd agree she's going to be a backup guard. She's not going to be a starter.
I think so.
They got to get Miracle Shepherd back, also a backup. Would you say?
Yeah, I think. Assuming
so there's a few things to answer question wise.
Assuming the team's fully healthy,
right.
I would expect LSU to start Cheyenne Day Wilson at point guard, just because she's got the experience that over some of LSU's other players. I think she'll probably start on Monday. Like I said, last year Poa won't play on Monday. Miracle Shepherd won't play on Monday. LSU, the good news for LSU is that they've got time to sort of figure out all these pieces and get people healthy, because right now they're kind of banged up.
And if you lose 1 game in the non-conference, if you lose to NC State in the ballroom,
nobody expects you to go undefeated all season. I mean, this.
Yeah.
Okay, on the men's side, it's a little bit different story because again, this is such a brand new team. We can learn a lot here. LSU's first kind of marquee game is at Kansas State. That's on November the 14th. That's 2 weeks from today, and that's obviously Cam Carter, who's at Donaldsonville. Like he came home when he transferred to LSU, but now he's going back to his other home to play K-State, where he was their leading scorer last year. So, interesting game there. Other marquee games, they play Pitt at a tournament in the Greenbrier, which Saints fans will remember. The Saints had training camp there about 10 years ago.
What if it's going to be out on the field, or are they going to be in the ballroom?
And I actually just looked this up. If LSU were to beat Pitt, they would play the winner of Wisconsin and UCF. And then if they lose, they play the loser of Wisconsin and UCF. So either way, you pick up another Power 5 team there. And then after that, they've got Florida State in the ACC SEC Challenge. They've got SMU. And that's about it for the non-conference schedule. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Power 5 games. What do you think, Rab? Like, what's realistic for this team? What do you want to see?
Oh, I think 3-2 would be tremendous if you in those games.
And then sweep the blood donor games.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way you put that. I hadn't really heard that one before, Zach. You phrase maker, you.
Not my phrase.
I think again, not quite the expectations for the men's program as the women. If they drop a couple of games, it's not the end of the world. They're trying to develop a team, get the chemistry together, as Reed said, and that might take stubbing your toe a little bit. That might be running out a combination that doesn't play for you in February in the SEC. I fully expect they're going to lose a couple of games, but it's not going to be the end of the world. It wasn't the end of the world last year when they lost to, was it Nichols?
Nichols.
Early on when Matt McMahon pounded the table in the post-game press conference, I'm like, oh God, these guys are going to win like 4 games all year, and then they wound up 500 in conference.
Do you think Brian Kelly got that move from Matt McMahon?
I think he did
about that now.
I think he did. I think Brian pays attention, to the whole family. He has. But speaking of Brian Kelly, he has a commercial for a local car dealership where he says family, and every time I listen and see, how is he saying family? Because I can't believe they put that word in there.
Really?
But they did.
Yeah.
Okay, and Reed, again, 5 Power 5 teams. They play 12 non-conference games overall, the men do. I would even say if you lost 3 of them, as long as you don't lose 4 or 5 of those, and you go into SEC play at, say, 9-3, and you have 3 Power 5 losses, you are still in a position where a good SEC performance gets you into the big dance, which is
it's about those quad 1 wins. It's about those resume building wins. You've got chances to pick up those in the non-conference, but you've also got a chance to lose those games and weaken your resume before the schedule really gets tough. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. I think the main expectation for LSU, probably, the power conference teams aside, win all your blood donor games. You lost to Nichols last year. That didn't look great on your resume. You should probably sweep the rest of those games and use them as tune-ups for the other games. So I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think it's probably fair to expect LSU to do that.
Yeah, win those and don't lose all of the Power 5 games, and then you're fine. Let's see what you got going into SEC play. Okay, Tiger Fans Associated Grocers is hiring. Join a team committed to the success of independent retail grocers. Apply today at Associated Grocers and be part of something great. We're going to move right into our sports betting segment, which is brought to you by the Queen of Baton Rouge. Experience the thrill of game day at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails, your premier destination for elevated sports entertainment. This is a good way to kind of show you the difference in expectations for these teams. The LSU women are 20-1 to win the national title. I think they're like the 8th choice. Okay, so they're not the favorite like they were last year, but they're in the conversation, 20-1. The LSU men are 150-1 to win the SEC. So they are long shots, and you can always look at people who put their own money on the line to tell you exactly what the reasonable expectations for this team are, and that also goes to show you, Reb, just how difficult the SEC men's schedule is.
Oh yeah, no question, and bringing in Texas and Oklahoma. Just ups the ante on what was already a difficult conference. Are we doing predictions? Or we can
do predictions, okay. Man. We're gonna finish with around the SEC basketball side.
I think third in the SEC is a good pick for LSU. They have to go to South Carolina. They have to go to Texas. The women I'm talking about, but and I think being ranked where they are or where they are in the odds to win the national championship, I think they look like an Elite 8 team right now with a chance to be. I want to see can they be with these pieces around this great nucleus and the nucleus of 3 returning players. I think is probably as good as anybody's 3 returning players in the country with Johnson, Morrow, and Williams. They have a chance to really be one of those teams again. Are they going to be a number 1 regional seed or something like that? I think their non-conference schedule tends to hurt them in that regard, their strength of schedule.
But they don't want to be a top 1 seed. They just want to have the home court.
Yeah, well, you get the
it's
home
all
court.
about the bracket too, right? Like once you just want to, you're a 2 seed, 3 seed. You want to see how the bracket breaks down, which it's way too early.
And the men, I'm going to say I'm bullish on the men. I'm going to say they're going to put the pieces together. They're going to get their act together, and they're going to be one of those 10 NCAA tournament teams. Maybe they're in Dayton for the play-in, with the first 4. I don't know. Maybe we're sending TJ to Dayton, Ohio, for that. But I think they get in somehow.
All right, Tiger fans, you can catch all the sports action at the Queen Casino's DraftKings Sportsbook Bar in 1717. Kitchen and cocktails with top-notch screens and live betting. It's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge and your go-to for game day or any day. And we're going to finish around the SEC. We did it football style. We'll do it basketball style. It is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States with high-quality scaffolding, erection, and rental services, thermal insulation services, industrial and commercial coatings, and much more. From large capital projects to commercial projects or small quick response needs, Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business, they're a proud community partner, supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. At Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. You mentioned it on the women's side, South Carolina and Texas and LSU, clearly the favorites. Reed, is there another team in the SEC you'd say is kind of a threat to break into the top 3 there?
Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma has a real shot to do that. They won the Big 12 last year, and then they added Reagan Beards, one of the top players in the portal, either the top player or the second best player in the portal, depending where you looked. She is a huge difference maker, and she's tough inside to deal with. Last year, she was one of the best players in the country, All-American on the second team, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how she integrates into that style of play that Oklahoma has. They like to run sort of really fast-paced, up-tempo transition type of offense. How does she fit in that? We haven't seen it yet, but they absolutely have the talent to break into that top tier of SEC teams. But I think it's pretty unanimous that it's South Carolina 1 and then Texas and then LSU. They're pretty grouped close together. South Carolina hasn't lost a regular season game when it feels like a decade now. They really don't lose in the regular season. So
we're going back 2 years ago. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
It is. They're as strong as they'll ever be. They won the national championship last year, and most of that team is back. Right, so I'm expecting them to cruise through the regular season again. And Texas has a lot of talent as well. Rory Harmon, who's having a great season last year, she's a guard. She's back. She tore her ACL in the middle of last year. She's back, and Madison Booker was the Big 12 Player of the Year last year, the first freshman to be named the Big 12 Player of the Year. She's now a first-team All-American. So there's a lot of talent between Texas and South Carolina. LSU can match their talent, but I think consensus is that it's that order of teams at the top of the conference.
The only reason you wouldn't pick South Carolina as the favorite is because it's so hard to repeat.
Being contrarian.
Yeah, they proved that 2 years ago when they won in 22, and then they came back the next year and lost to Iowa in the national semifinals, and LSU beat Iowa in the championship game. So that's the only thing that makes you go, it's just hard to repeat. But they have the ability, that's for sure.
Looking at the preseason AP Top 25, which harder than ever in college basketball, as you mentioned, Reb. These teams are all brand new, but South Carolina's number 1, Texas is number 4, LSU's 7, Oklahoma's 10. So there's kind of that even spacing, and then there's a gap. Ole Miss is number 20, Kentucky 22, Alabama 24.
And Tennessee is not ranked.
Yeah, you kind of have these second tier contenders, if you will. On the men's side, Alabama is number 2 in the nation preseason. They are the SEC favorite. Nate Oates he's building a monster over there. I mean, I know LSU fans, you're pulling your hair out knowing you got to deal with Alabama in another marquee sport, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, he is. They went to their first Final Four last year. It's hard to believe last season that they did that, but he's taken what has always been a good but not great basketball tradition in Alabama and kind of taken it to another level. And they're a national contender now. And obviously Kentucky is in flux with Jim Calipari leaving them to go to Arkansas. That's he kind of got out ahead of the ahead of the law, I guess you might say. I mean, the seat might have been getting a little hot in Lexington for Calipari because they've kind of underperformed over the last few years. But I mean, it's a former player is their coach now.
Mark Pope.
Mark Pope.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't exactly
Former BYU coach. Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't exactly strike fear into the hearts of anyone. But
no, but he's going to
see.
get players there, and if he can coach, like they're always going to be good. So Alabama's number 2. Just looking at again AP top 25, take it for what it's worth. Then there's the gap, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of SEC teams: Auburn 11, Tennessee 12, Texas A&M 13, Arkansas with John Calipari 16, Texas is 19th. Florida is 21st. Kentucky is 23rd. Ole Miss is 24th. I mean, you can see the depth of this conference. Like Alabama's the favorite, Reed, but man, it's hard to say that they're a heavy favorite with that many teams kind of chasing them and unbalanced schedules and all that.
And if you're a program like LSU, you're looking at that and you're like, how do I break into that mix? Just given the talent and the sheer depth, like you mentioned, of the conference, like it's a bloodbath. It's going to be really difficult to get to 500 again. LSU did it last year. It's going to be harder to do that this year. So evaluate the record that whatever LSU finishes with. Evaluate that in the context of how good the conference is they're playing in. And like we mentioned, the opportunities they'll have in the non-conference. They'll also have a lot of opportunities in conference play. They can pull off a couple big wins like they did last year against Kentucky at home at the buzzer. Those can be really big resume-building wins that they can use to sort of state their case for the tournament by the end of the year.
All right. I know it's been a long show. We appreciate you sticking with us. We wanted to talk some football, but also get into men's and women's basketball season previews. So if you enjoyed the content, hit the like button for us. Subscribe to the LSU Sports at NOLA.com YouTube channel. 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or however you listen. We appreciate that. You got the AirPods in. You're listening to this while the kids are trick-or-treating or the nieces and nephews or grandkids or whoever it is. Just reach down and thumb that like button for us. We
just
appreciate
tune him out and listen to us, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
Good advice.
It gets noisy and the spooky noises and stuff gets old, and no, I enjoy trick or treating and with the kids. I actually think I like doing it with the kids more than I did when I was a kid. I like seeing them.
Do you have a costume? You're going to dress up this year?
Oh, my wife will give me a mask or something. It's just, Yeah. The kids are Doctor Strange, a Gatorade bottle, and Wednesday Addams.
Oh. Okay.
An eclectic mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
So happy Halloween, everybody, and we're going to sign off. We'll be back LSU Alabama next week, all week, Tigers and Tide. For Scott Rabalais and Reed Darcey, Amelia Cotton's our producer. She does a great job. I'm Zach Ewing, and we'll see you next time on the LSU Sports Insider.